Hey guys, Veebat here with another V-Place, taking a look at the BF-109Z, otherwise known as the Zwilling. This is going to be the Tier 7 heavy fighter for the German line, and yes, this thing is quite the odd-looking duck, but anybody who's ever started this game and got to the Zwilling and told me, man, what a weird-looking plane, who would have ever thought to do something like this? Well, there you have it, guys. They aren't alone. We did it. We did it for 272 twin Mustangs known as the F-82s. They came into existence at 1945 and then stayed in service all the way through the Korean War, operating as a fighter escort. And believe it or not, the P-82 actually had the capability of carrying, like, what was it, 4 1,000-pound bombs and 25 5-hinge rockets. It still retained the 6 50-cal machine guns, but they were mounted in the connection point of the wings in the center, so they're center-line machine guns, which is way better than what I could say for the Zwilling. Now, the Zwilling only existed, 2 prototypes were built, and then there was another 2 on the drafting board, and this is kind of a weird amalgamation of what could be considered the best of all of those different options. But look at where the cannons are coming from on this aircraft compared to that P-82 I just mentioned, right? There are 2 outboard stations for cannons on the outside edge of the wings, so really far spaced apart. And then you also have 2 hub-mounted cannons, which sounds like a great idea, except that those hubs are now mounted separated as well because it's a twin-engine airframe. And it's also rocking Mark 108 30mm cannons. Now, 30mm cannons are pretty decent guns, and when they do get on target, they are extremely devastating. But 108s have a much loftier flight profile, in other words, a very slow muzzle velocity, so it takes a while to get to the target. So it's harder to get these guns on target, but once they do, it's definitely devastating, but it just feels like you're missing more often than you would think that you should be. It does take a little bit to get used to, and I'll be honest, I've been flying this plane for a while. It's fully upgraded and I'm still trying to get a hang of it, but I do need to get used to it because this type of cannon fire, this kind of sluggish shooting out lots of damage in quick little bursts like that, is very similar to the XP-58, the Chain Lightning. It's also very similar to the British heavies once you get up to Tier 9 and Tier 10 with their 30mm cannons, and you're also going to see some more similarities as you make your way up through the rest of the 262s. Now granted, the 262s will eventually get the Mark 103, which is a much higher muzzle velocity 30mm cannon, but the aircraft are going to be moving faster as well, so the lead you're going to need to pull on other aircraft is going to become relatively similar to what you're experiencing here. So the sooner you get used to that flight profile of the shells, the better it's going to be overall for you to be able to get those guns on target. What we're doing here is we are playing to the strengths of the airframe. We are staying at altitude. We are using our descent with our improved aircraft polish to be able to get the advantage of an increased top speed of 5% as well as 25% faster acceleration in the dive to be able to do boom and zoom runs. Now we came in, we made a kind of a drop on that Corsair, took a few rounds into him and caused him some damage, but then we ignored him when he started to turn back on us and we went after this Zero and we gave him a few hits, and now we're coming back down on the aircraft trying to get some more damage on him, and we managed to take out that aircraft. And that's exactly the type of thing you want to do when you're flying a heavy. Now the better you are with the guns and the better you are at reading the situation, the more consistent results you're going to have. You can see here that these cannon shells seem to just be floating through the air, and I just felt like I was having a lot of trouble getting these guns to connect. I don't know if I'm just getting used to it or it's the fact that I'm running a pretty unskilled crew right now. There's only Marksman 1 on this aircraft since I left my more proficient crew in my ME-410, this aircraft's predecessor, since I was going to be keeping that airframe. This aircraft also gets to carry one bomb on it, and I'll talk about this again later, but it's only a minor decrease in overall velocity of the aircraft, so it didn't hurt carrying it, and it is a pretty decent bomb. It can usually take out a medium sight. The other thing that this aircraft is good at doing is intercepting bombers, going up at these high altitudes and providing a lot of damage output from these 4 30mm cannons can make short work of these bombers, especially these, what is this, the Tier 5 bomber? No, that couldn't be. Ju-88? I guess it is. Not quite sure why we're seeing that airframe now. Oh, I remember why. He's paired up with somebody that's in a Tier 6 aircraft. That's why. Kind of gave himself a rough time with the matchmaking, as we can see here. So early on we went in and we took the one garrison, and then we came back to this garrison and we started playing more of a defensive role, since we already noted that there was enemies in the area, and by focusing down those aircraft inside the capture zone, it allowed us to be able to get the edge and capture the garrison, opposed to that letting that enemy run rampant and kind of having a race to see who could get the kills. Heavy fighters aren't necessarily quick at getting a lot of kills. They're more meant for being able to come in and get one target knocked out or at least severely damaged in a single pass. We came in, we made our run, we used our altitude a little bit, we got a little bit of separation, and now we're going to do an up and over turn in order to get some more altitude so we can start dropping again and maintaining our velocity in the dive. And we're trying to help our team out, and we managed to get that aircraft out of the battle by getting a little nick on him in that head-on pass. A little note I've started to have when I was playing this game and I was trying to get used to the 50 cal machine guns on my FJ1, or even the, what is it, the XF85 Goblin. The idea that if you think that you're pulling enough lead, pull just a hair more. It's a lot easier to walk your guns back onto a target than it is to try and pull more lead on the aircraft. So once you start to get that kind of dynamic built into your head, I think that you'll find that you're going to have better success with your aiming. So that's what I've been doing, and it usually helps quite a bit. The other thing you can do to try and determine which way an aircraft is going to be turning, if it looks like he's kind of doing a little bit of a corkscrew jog and he's about to make a hard turn, look at where his wings are angled, because he's going to be making a turn in the vertical plane based off of where those wings are angled. So if the wings are oriented so the cockpit is facing to the left and the wings are vertical, then you know that he's going to be making a turn to the left in the horizontal plane. And you can usually figure out what he's going to be doing next, so you can try and get that lead early, which you're going to need to do in an aircraft that is not nearly as maneuverable as a lot of these other fighter aircraft. At this point we're in squall line, so every aircraft that is knocked out of the battle is going to be gone for the duration, so we're trying to choose our targets carefully. I know I'm not going to be able to succeed in a turning fight against that F4U1, so I decide that I'm going to press on out of the zone and try and help out my ally here. Looks like these two aircraft are relatively distracted, so I'm trying to get some hits on them, but they went into their bot spinning maneuvers, so it was very difficult to get on target. We're going to see a similar kind of roll here from this aircraft, and what I've noticed is if you just take your guns and you orient them to the right and slightly up a little bit, that's usually where their roll is going to take them. That corkscrew roll, when they're coming straight at you, is going to corkscrew, from your vision. It looks like he's going to kind of make a corkscrew down and counterclockwise away from your aircraft, and then when he goes to make that second turn, it's going to stall the turn just a little bit and make a shallow spin. So if you can time it for that first and then second kind of shallow spin, that's where you're going to have your best luck. On to the post-game stats. And as you can see here at the post-game stats, there's not a whole lot going on here. I mean, we had a pretty decent battle. I consider this on average. And we were able to rack in 54,000 with a premium and 20,000 with a non-premium, which is pretty good considering that we are indeed running a full universal load on this aircraft, which means that that is nearly 22,000 credits just in ammunition alone. So if you were running non-premium or non-universal ammo and just running the standard rounds, you probably could see a pretty decent profit margin on this airframe. This was a ×2, so 6,500 experience as at tier 7, 3000 XP for an average battle is going to be a pretty decent result and will allow you to continue to grind through this airframe with relative regularity. You can see here that again, we didn't do anything spectacular. We really just played to our role. We only got grade 4 heavy fighter. We destroyed 11 aircraft. We never died. We assisted with 3, captured 2 sectors, as well as getting 140 capture points. Now, I'm still getting used to these cannons, which probably I should be used to them by now, considering that I've been flying this aircraft for a pretty decent amount of time, enough to be able to unlock all of the equipment and modules. So let's talk about that for a minute. What do we have for equipment and modules? Well, the 20mm cannons are what you're going to start with. There is a combination of wing mounted and hub mounted. So if you look at the airframe itself in between these two details, there is a cannon in between, and there is another one on the other wing. So there's these little pods sticking off the sides. Those are really far out on the outboard stations of the wings, which means that you're going to have a very wide firing arc, and I think you saw that in the video play or the gameplay footage video. And then you're also going to have hub mounted cannons. In this case, we're looking at 20mm cannons, and none of these are going to carry over from another airframe. So the wing mounted cannons, you're going to have to actually unlock these, and otherwise you're just going to be running 2 hub mounted 20s to start out, and that's pretty difficult to get through. Now, I mentioned this in the 109 Gustav video, that there it is. This hub mounted 30mm cannon, which is the upgrade, you get carried over between the 109G and the 109Z. Now, I unlocked it on the G, which meant that I had it available for the Z, which is great because I'll be honest with you guys, running this thing stock without the firepower needed to be a boom and zoom fighter is very difficult. And then, of course, you're going to need to unlock a 30mm cannon for the sponson mounted cannons as well. And now these are the Mark 108 variant, and you saw in the video, very sluggish rate of fire, very sluggish travel time, very difficult to pull lead with these cannons. The bomb carries over from the ME410, so you're good there. It is a single bomb, and since it is a single bomb, when you take a look at the comparison to running it clean and running it with a bomb, it's only a 6 mile/hour top speed difference, which I don't feel as though is that big of a margin to not carry the bomb, but it is only one 500-pound bomb. This bomb is capable of doing 4,400 damage, which is good enough to be able to take out one medium ground site, so it allows you to be able to get a little bit of extra income when it comes to credits and experience by helping to get some capture points by destroying a site. When it comes to the airframe, you are going to see a change in the overall characteristics of the survivability, as well as the max speed, as well as it says here maneuverability. I'm willing to bet you that maneuverability changed, since it isn't showing any indication of roll rate and optimal airspeed here, that it's most likely going to be that decimal point, that phantom decimal point underneath the average turn time. So this is a 14 point whatever, and it's been reduced by going to the next airframe. For the engines, with the exception of the third engine, which are going to be carried over from the Focke-Wulfs as well as the TA-152 and the ME-209A. If you have not gotten to the ME-209A, then you are probably going to have to grind both of these engines out for this airframe, and these are going to be absolutely needed when you compare the horsepower outputs between each one of these. You're looking at a difference of nearly 500 horsepower per upgrade, which is definitely going to be substantial, and when you're in a boom and zoom fighter, you're going to need that zoom option. With a 14-second turn time, that is pretty lengthy turn time, albeit that this is a relatively maneuverable heavy compared to some of its peers out there. I can tell you that the F7F is a very sluggish turner, as well as the Hornet, so this gives you a little bit of an advantage when it comes to being able to turn against other heavies. And I mean, for goodness sake guys, it is a 109Z, it's just that there's two of them tied together. This is like two 109Gs lashed together in order to get some more gun output and a little bit more power on the airframe. Improved flaps gives me a little bit more maneuverability, which is nice to have for me to maintain the advantage against the other heavies. It is arguable, however, whether or not you need this, or you could mount the engine tuning 3 and get a little bit more thrust out of the engines. And then the improved aircraft polish is always going to be a staple on the heavies for the bonus of 25% acceleration in the dive, in addition to the maximum airspeed bump. Gyroscopic gun sight, an absolute necessity. With these guns placed so far apart from one another, it's definitely going to be needed so that way you can try and get those guns to then focus together on a singular target. And then when it comes to cruise skills, I have Marksman 1 on this pilot because he's a relatively new pilot, since I wanted to keep my ME-410, so I am now starting a new crew just to go down the 262 line. I will get Engine Guru 1 once I get my second skill point, but once I get the third, or I should say once I get my fourth skill point, once I get the fifth skill point, I'll most likely retrain him in order to give him Marksman 2, because these 30mm cannons can be devastating, but they gotta hit the target, and if they don't, then you're gonna find yourself at a massive disadvantage when it comes to the ability to turn in a lot of those fights. So I'd rather get the boom on target immediately. Things do get better when you get to the 262. You can even see it on this image right here, that those 30mm cannons are going to be mounted center line on the airframe, which means that you are going to have a much better time of getting those guns on target. It'll be a little bit of a grind, however, because you're going to start with only two 30mm cannons and then work your way up to 4 after an airframe upgrade. But you'll also get the option of air-to-air rockets. So I think you guys will find that once we get to the 262, things will start to normalize a little bit more. But the 109 Zwilling, I have been having a little bit of a tough time with, and I think once I get a handle on it, it'll prove to be a very devastating machine. However, I'll most likely be exiting the aircraft at about that time. So thank you guys for watching, and as always, like, favorite, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you liked, what you didn't like, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.